Hello YouTube, Dave here again. Welcome to the next installment in my Through the Ages series on the Paladin class. Today we're going to be taking a look at the second edition AD&D Paladin. And I'm going to be honest, this probably should have been included in the first edition video. I do want to have each version though be its own separate class, own separate video. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of similarities. So this one's not going to be the longest video, unfortunately. Also, I don't have a lot of second edition expansion books or splat books, whatever you want to call them. So I don't have like the complete Paladin's handbook or guidebook or whatever that was called. So I can only really talk about the core player's handbook version of the Paladin class. But with that said, let's just sort of dive right into it. This is my original player's handbook that I bought all the way back in 1999. And you can tell because it's got, where is it here? It's got the part where I had to tape it together because I was letting other people use my book, passing it around the table, and one player in particular had a really bad habit of just holding the book by nothing but the edge of the back cover and letting everything else hang down. So this is my original player's handbook from quite a long time ago, 24 years ago at this point, which is kind of crazy to think about. But let's take a look at our Paladin class. Before we get there, the Paladin is a subclass of the Fighter once again. In first edition AD&D, with the release of the Unearthed Arcana book, the Paladin was shifted from a Fighter subclass to a Cavalier subclass. And that was kind of interesting. But we're back to just being a Fighter subclass here. But let's just take a moment to appreciate this second edition. This is the revised core rulebook player's handbook. But let's just take a moment to appreciate that mustache. This is not the Paladin, this is the Fighter, but that's one hell of a mustache, and I got to give it to the guy there. Now here's our Paladin, and he's got a little bit of a handlebar going on there, so that's pretty cool to see as well. So the Paladin class in 2nd edition AD&D requires a 12 strength, a 9 constitution, a 13 wisdom, and a 17 charisma, which I think was the same requirements as 1st edition AD&D. Truthfully, there's not a huge amount of difference in the classes from 1st to 2nd edition, especially like the fighter type classes. If they have a 16 or better in both strength and I think it's strength and wisdom, then they get a 10% experience point bonus as well. What's also kind of cool in this particular book here, strength and charisma scores of 16 gain a 10% bonus. I don't know why they say charisma of 16. Charisma has to be a 17, so they automatically meet the charisma score requirement for the bonus experience, so long as they're playing a paladin. But what's actually kind of cool here is that they actually give you examples of what individuals from like history or folklore or just like fairy tales sometimes might qualify as members of the class. So for here, the Paladin is a noble and heroic warrior. Example Paladins would be Roland and the 12 Peers of Charlemagne, Sir Lancelot, Sir Galahad. Sir Lancelot, Sir Galahad, and I, of course, being the ones to jump out of the giant wooden bunny, the Trojan bunny. If you get that reference, then you've obviously been gaming for a while, probably. But yeah, so it's just kind of cool that they do provide you with some examples that you can use as sort of like headcanon to kind of wrap your head around how the character should be presented. Just kind of cool to see. The Paladins, of course, have to be lawful good alignment. That hasn't changed from the 1st edition at all, and they are able there, and there are some things that they have to be very careful of. If they willingly commit an evil act, then they are stripped of all of their paladin abilities, and essentially are fighters of the same level of paladin, and that's what they advance at going forward. If a paladin commits an evil act while enchanted or controlled by magic, they still lose paladin status until they can atone for the deed. The loss of status means the character loses all his special abilities and essentially functions as a fighter without the benefit of weapon specialization, by the way. Of the same level, regaining his status undoubtedly requires completion of some dangerous quest or important mission to once again prove his worth. So that's kind of messed up, I'm not going to lie. Like, they're being punished for doing something that they weren't in control of. Now later on, a paladin, they can go through an atonement process if their alignment shifts, and like even if it's willing, they can still find a way to atone. But this is like, even if you had no say in what happened, like you're just completely controlled magically and forced to do something against your will, you still had a heck of a time trying to regain that paladin status. Kind of crazy. The paladin can detect the presence of evil intent up to 60 feet away by concentrating on locating evil in a particular direction. He can do this as often as desired, but each attempt takes 1 round. The ability detects evil monsters and characters. So again, a pretty standard ability they've had for a while. They also get a +2 bonus on all saving throws. They're immune to all forms of disease. However, it does say here that things like lycanthropy and mummy rot are curses and not diseases. Therefore, they are not immune to those. A paladin can heal by laying on hands, so it restores 2 points per level of experience. He can heal himself or someone else, but only once per day. So when you use your lay on hands, you're pumping all the available points all at once, like, because you can't break it up, which is something that again we will see in later versions of the ability. But for now, it's a once a day ability where it's just 2 points per level. So a 6th level paladin can heal 12 points of damage once per day. A paladin can cure disease of all sorts, though not cursed afflictions, such as lycanthropy. This can be done only once per week for each 5 levels of experience, so once per week at levels 1 through 5, twice at level 6 through 10, etc. Again, similar to the first edition AD&D, but it's still making the remove disease better than what we'll see in the next video, because they don't start getting that ability until much higher levels, and it still starts at once per week, which is... I'll talk about my thoughts on that a little bit later. A paladin is surrounded by an aura of protection. So it's a 10-foot radius. Within the radius, all summoned and specifically evil creatures suffer a -1 penalty to their attack rolls regardless of whom they attack. Creatures affected by this aura can spot its source easily, even if the paladin is disguised. So... yeah, again, that's... I can't remember how the first edition one worked. It's been a few weeks and there's been a lot of stuff going on. But I think it's similar. I think it was like the protection from evil spell, which is pretty similar to that. So again, we still have our protective aura. A paladin using a holy sword projects a circle of power, 10 feet in diameter, so the same size as the aura protection. When the sword is unsheathed and held, this power dispels hostile magic of a level up to the paladin's experience level. A holy sword is a very special weapon. If your paladin acquires one, the DM will explain its other powers. So again, that's so pretty similar. When you have the holy sword available and you're holding it in hand, you can use it to dispel hostile magic. So it does specify that it has to be hostile. So spells that might be on like enemy combatants, for example, or things of that nature might suppress magic items in the area. So really cool stuff there. The paladin gains the ability to turn undead and fiends when they reach 3rd level. He affects these monsters the same as a cleric 2 levels lower. So at 3rd level, a paladin turns undead and fiends as if you were a 1st level cleric, and it just continues like that. So a 20th level paladin will turn as an 18th level cleric. A paladin may call for his warhorse upon reaching 4th level or any time thereafter. This faithful steed need not be a horse. It may be whatever sort of creature is appropriate to the character as decided by your dungeon master. The paladin's warhorse is a very special animal, bonded by fate to its warrior. The paladin does not really call the animal, nor does the horse instantly appear in front of him. Rather, the character must find his warhorse in some memorable way, most frequently by a specific quest. Now, what's interesting in here is it doesn't mention anything about how, like, what happens if the warhorse dies. So, like in 1st edition, if you lose that warhorse, you have to wait a decade from when the first warhorse was summoned before you can summon another one. Here, it does sound like they did fix that, so you don't have to wait quite so long. However, you do have to go on some sort of quest in order to gain your mount. So if you lose a mount, then you would have to go on another quest, and it's likely that the dungeon master would require it to be a more dangerous quest than the first time. The paladin may cast pre-spells. So this is something that they had before. But it's a little bit different in second edition AD&D because pre-spells are broken into spheres of influence. So it's not like before where they just had access to the whole list, or in like even in future editions where you just have like a whole list of cleric spells that you can choose from. Here, you can only cast spells from the combat, divination, healing, and protection spheres. Now, I don't know what their spell casting gets up to. It only gets up to 4th level. So this doesn't talk about like major or minor access, like what we had with the clerics. Like major access means they can cast any spell of any level from that sphere. If they have minor access, I think they can only go up to 3rd level. So I think they just give them major access to all those spheres because they only get up to 4th level spells anyway, and they don't get very many of them. So, and they don't gain their first one until like 15th level. So I don't think we have to worry too much about that. But again, a paladin doesn't start casting spells at all until they reach 9th level. So again, it's one of those abilities where it's kind of neat, I guess, but you get one first level spell at 9th level. Like it's not going to do a whole lot, and you are limited to the spheres that you can cast from. So I don't know. Paladin spellcasting, in my opinion, has always been really underwhelming, and we'll see that eventually it just gets phased out. So there we go. A paladin may not possess more than 10 magic items. Furthermore, they must not exceed 1 suit of armor, 1 shield, 4 weapons, and 4 other magical items, which was the same as what we had in first edition AD&D as well. So they can't just hoard magic items. They have to have a very specific number of them. A paladin never retains wealth. Again, similar to first edition AD&D. He may keep only enough treasure to support himself in a modest manner. Pay his henchmen, men-at-arms, and servitors a reasonable rate. And to construct and maintain a small castle or keep, funds can be set aside for this purpose. All excess must be donated to the church or another worthy cause. This money can never be given to another player character or an NPC controlled by a player. So that's always been like the we're not letting you loophole this sort of thing, which I always think, because you know that when they were starting like creating D&D and creating the paladin class and having like the fact that they can't retain wealth, at some point one of the first people to play a paladin is like, all right, well, I'll just donate all the money that I don't need to like the mage or something like that. So like that had to be tried for it to be specifically stated that you can't do that in multiple editions. I love it. A paladin must tithe. So this is separate from the never retains wealth to whatever charitable religious institution of a lawful good alignment he serves. A tithe is 10% of the paladin's income, whether coins, jewels, magical items, wages, rewards, or taxes. It must be paid immediately. So they have to pay 10% off the top, and then they also can't retain an excess amount of wealth. So Paladin's not a class that you want to play if you're looking to get rich. A paladin does not attract a body of followers upon reaching 9th level or building a castle. However, he can still hire soldiers and specialists, although those men must be lawful good in comportment? Okay. They have to be lawful good. I've never heard the word comportment before, so I'm going to have to look that one up. A paladin may employ only lawful good henchmen, or those who act in such a manner when alignment is unknown. A paladin will cooperate with characters of other alignments only as long as they behave themselves. He will try to show them the proper way to live through both word and deed. The paladin realizes that most people simply cannot maintain his high standards. Even thieves can be tolerated, provided they are not evil and are sincerely trying to reform. He will not abide the company of those who commit evil or unrighteous acts. Stealth in the cause of good is acceptable, though, although only as a last resort. So again, I actually kind of like the little change that they made to that version of the ability. In first edition AD&D, the paladin had to basically exclusively surround himself with like lawful good individuals and would only travel with non-lawful good individuals on like a per mission sort of thing, which could make it very difficult to have a paladin in a long-term party. So here the paladin just doesn't want to travel with evil people, which I think is fair. They are willing to tolerate like chaotic good or neutral good individuals, which is a little bit different than what we had with the what we had with the first edition AD&D version of the Paladin class. So there you go. And for the most part, it is very similar to the first edition version of the Paladin that I discussed in the last video, but there are some changes. For example, the spell casting now being based off of specific spheres, which was not a thing in the first edition player's handbook, or if it wasn't as integral to the spell casting of clerics and paladins as it is in second edition AD&D. And the other big thing is that they can at least now form long-term relationships with non-lawful good characters, as long as they still share the good alignment, or at least don't outwardly detect as evil, using their detect evil ability. So you could have like neutral characters as long as they're not performing evil deeds. This feels like the genesis of the needing to distract the paladin while the other party members do something that the paladin would definitely not agree with. This is also probably where the overbearing paladin sort of came from, where the paladin is trying to show individuals that aren't lawful good alignment in his company how they should be acting. So I can kind of see that this is where the overbearing paladin that needs to be distracted so the players can have fun sort of thing may have come from. But overall, it's still, a pretty cool class. Still difficult to qualify for, though not as difficult to qualify for as the paladin was in the first edition version of it. That's the Paladin for second edition AD&D. Once again, I can't discuss books or products that I don't own, so I know that there is like a complete Paladin's handbook. I don't have it, I don't own it, I can't tell you what's in there, but if any of you have that book or are familiar with that book, let me know some of the cool things that they've given to paladins in that book in the comments below. I know a lot of those books have what are called kits, which is sort of a precursor to prestige classes, in that they're modifications to the core class that give them new abilities but may take away other ones as time goes on. Let me know any of that stuff from that book, specifically if you have it or if you're familiar with it, in the comments below. I don't own the book. I've never held that book in my hand. I've never looked through it, so I have no idea what's in there, and I don't want to talk about stuff that I don't have the ability to sort of like just be able to do this with. So there you go. Anyway, thank you guys so very much for watching. Let me know in the comments below, have you played a second edition AD&D Paladin? And if so, what were your experiences? How overbearing were you when it came to preaching the lawful good lifestyle to the fellow party members? Or what things did they do to get you out of the room so they could do things like maybe steal, pickpocket, or potentially abuse a prisoner, which is all stuff that I've seen done in groups that I was playing with. So anyway, there you go. So that was the second edition AD&D Paladin. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope you come back for the next video in this series when we take a look at the third edition, specifically the 3.0 Paladin. So looking forward to that one. Anyway, thank you all so very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you all next time. Until then, take care.